The one from the House.
The House's comments on our 9.1.
Yes, absolutely. Let me make sure I have it. All right. Okay, everybody seeing this document? It should have yellow highlight, green highlight.
Yep. And David, we did have a meeting late last night with Representatives Marcotte and Kimball, and preliminarily, it's not final. We've agreed to some of their changes and they've agreed to some of ours, and there's been some compromises on a few of them. That was just Senator Clarkson and I. It has to go through the whole committee, but we want to, I want David to certainly make note of where our agreements are so he could start working on a changed document. So they, on tourism and marketing, David, they did not make any changes except to the money, right?
That's correct. It's the dollar figure, the 2 million is the same. It's just the allocation between the two pots.
Okay.
So the first being their general statewide marketing, and then the second being 500 to local, regional, or statewide, to increase consumer spending, will support local business, et cetera.
Okay, so we talked, and among the four of us, tentatively, preliminarily, we agreed to change the numbers to 600,000 and $1.4 million. So that's a minor change. Basically, last summer when they did the pilot program, they had 600,000 to give out 60 $10,000 grants. So we sort of split the difference here. So we can move on to the next section.
So the numbers are the same in section 2. They have removed the limiting language that ties these grants and this funding to ARPA.
Okay, I think what we decided here is that that would be okay, and that's going to be a decision of the Appropriations Committee anyhow, as to where they get the money from and whether they need this added language. I guess they were thinking that this couldn't be used for ARPA, so why limit it to helping ARPA
Right.
businesses, correct?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
So I think we can leave that the same, and if the Appropriations Committee wants to fund it through ARPA, they may have to put this language back in.
Okay. So section 3, the post-secondary CTE system. So the difference here is that it does add in the language proposed by Jay Ramsey that basically threads into this process adult basic education and adult secondary education. It does, it changes, it kind of puts the Agency of Education in charge rather than DOL.
Right.
And it adds $25,000 from AOE to the process. So it would still be 75,000 from existing funds in labor, 25,000 from existing funds in AOE, and then AOE working with labor, state colleges, Adult Tech Ed Association, and then 2 reps from entities who serve adult basic and adult secondary education would be involved. So I think, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, I didn't realize that there was more money. Where is that 25,000?
Again, it comes from their existing funds on hand, but it's in section 4 here.
Okay. I don't think we had any problems with that, did we, Senator?
No,
Okay.
this is exactly what I talked about with Jay, and the House has agreed, and I think this is good.
Okay. Better Places.
So there are changes here. They've essentially, as far as the substance of the program, they have gone back to their position of max grants of 50,000. That's here, and then
And we tentatively agreed last night to make that 40,000. And we agreed to keep our
Yeah.
language of 33%.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah,
So the money is 1.5 million right now, I believe.
Right. This is still, that's what we had made as a package offer, uh, uh, which included the remote worker. So we were comfortable last night in saying if we can reach full agreement on everything, that, this would be an appropriate. They had 5 million, we had 1 million. So we had suggested 1.5 and they had accepted. But it is still, this is a big one and it's still, hopefully the other stuff will come together so we don't have to revisit this.
So on section 8, remember that the House did not have a sunset. You added in a sunset of 2023. They proposed to extend that to 2024.
And we agreed to that, but I guess I want to ask a question. Does that mean in any way, one way or another, that the 1.1 million or 1.5 million is to be used over that period? Or is there any intent or implication one way or another, whether that's an annual figure for 3 years? Because
There's really no such thing as a commitment or a permanent appropriation of funds over, like a guarantee that money will be appropriated each year for a number of years. There's no way to lock that into
right.
law the way we do our budgeting. So this is $1.5 million. It gets deposited in that fund. They have the authority to use that money for as long as it's in the fund and as long as their statutory authority exists. So if you appropriate money in future years, they could use that future money. If you appropriate money and they don't spend it, you could take it back. I mean, you have complete control over that. So whether there's sort of like an understanding that more funds may be coming, even if you appropriated that money, the legislature next year could just undo it. There's no way to bind the future legislature to spending unless they've already actually spent the money. You can't obviously take that back, but
I
otherwise it
I
sits there.
I understand. I understand that. I appreciate the explanation. My concern is that this is a new program, and I don't know what the governor proposed when he was proposing $5 million with no sunset on the program, whether he was expecting that $5 million to be spent in 1 year and carry forward into future years.
Mhm.
He was going to come back with $5 million each. That's a ton of money.
Sure.
My intent here, or hope, was that this 1.5, and part of the reason why we agreed to I agreed to the extension, was it sort of spreads this money out over a 3-year period. I know we can't commit, but we could put language in, it is the intent of the General Assembly that this 1.5 million shall be used during this 3-year period. And then if another legislature wants to come back, they can add money or subtract money. But I'm not feeling really good about spending 5 million or 1.5 million every year on an untested program at this point.
My understanding, Mr. Chair, is that this is to be spread out over that period.
That was my understanding too. So I think we may, but David's right, unless we could put some intent language in there, but it's not binding on anybody. But I think it's less likely that they would spend the money faster if they knew it had to last 3 years. And it's also less likely that the legislature would claw back any of carry forward if it was stated in here as an intent section.
Right.
I can put that in. What I heard yesterday is that they would not be able to spend this in 1 year, that they wanted to.
That's right. And that's what they
That's
told
what we
us.
heard. We heard the same thing.
So if you could put some intent language in there, that would be good.
Sure. So they changed the reporting a little bit so that there would be interim reports in April of the first 2 years and then a final report in January.
Okay.
So,
Yep, they sweetened tax day. So we'll hear positive news on tax day.
Okay,
I guess if the program though is repealed, when is that repeal fall? It is July the 1st, 24. So I guess theoretically they could spend money the first half of 2024, which would mean you would want a final report to actually be in 2025, right? I don't know if it matters, but
Oh, yeah. Well, no, that makes it 3 years, doesn't it? Oh, you're right. 3 years from January.
maybe the interim should be April of 22, 23, 24, and final is 25. But that's up to you. I don't know that it matters, but if you're going to push out the authorization and they can spend money in 24,
Yes, you're right. The 3 years, it makes more sense to do that.
that's section 9.
I'm sorry, I got distracted. What are we doing here?
I was just observing
Decide
that
what the 3 years is.
they've called for a final report in January of 24, but with the extension of their sunset to July of 24, it means that theoretically the program could still be spending money in the first half of 24, which means you may want a final report in 25, not 24.
A final report, January 25.
Well, how about April 1st, so the legislature could decide whether we want to continue the program?
For the final?
Yeah.
April 1st of 25?
24. The program's
So
going to
the-
sunset. The program's going to sunset in July of 24. Wouldn't we want another report? You don't have to call it final, but before we make a decision on whether to put more money in, how good does it do us to get a report 8 months later after the program's closed down? I mean, it does do us some good, but if we're trying to make a decision as to whether to continue it, it seemed like that would be less useful.
So we had, let's go line by line. Do you guys want interim reports in April of the intervening years,
Yes,
Sure.
yeah, because
22 and 23? And what happens after 23?
I would listen, let's do this. Get rid of 2 and put April 2015, 24 in the first line and just call reports. Don't call them interim or final, just reports on April 15th, April 15th, and April 15th. You could say annual reports. Okay.
Okay, great, got it. International business is the same, all the same. Yeah, at this point, I don't know what in the world is going on with 12 or whether you need it at all. Same with 13. These issues are addressed elsewhere in the budget. So particularly if this goes into the budget, I don't think you need these sections, but that's up to you.
Is this any different than what we had in?
No, but remember, it's the vestigial stuff about state colleges that came from the House that was ultimately, separated from the money. Then you guys kept in the reference for 12, but you didn't have any operative language either. And then, so that's all the state college stuff. And then for 13, this is just saying, basically what you are doing in the budget, which is adding 200,000 additional base for micro business and then 2 million for Embrace. So again, these sections don't do anything other than reference what you're doing elsewhere in the budget.
Right. Well, I don't want to, to the extent they add some requirement or intent or interpretation to what's in the budget, and to the extent there's no agreement, I don't want to start revisiting it. So just let's leave it. Did we agree, Senator Clarkson, on the 2 million? We had made it 1.5 million. I think we did agree, because I think the appropriators had already agreed on that. Do you remember? Looks like Senator Clarkson's gone. All right, we'll come. Remember to remind me to come back to this one. I don't know if the number was agreed upon or not. I can't recall.
I believe that it was based on what discussions I heard, but I'm not gonna stick my neck out for that one.
Okay.
Section 14,
You think, you're saying you think it was agreed
I do,
among us or among the appropriators?
appropriators.
Okay.
So
I think we did say that as well. Okay.
I believe at this point, the BIPOC business development section is the same as the Senate in its entirety. Yep. There are a couple of changes in the seed capital fund. The money is the same. They did move to strike subdivision 6 here.
Okay. So we talked about this. We want to preserve some sort of collaboration and priority that they look to VITA in addition to looking to the seed capital, and there'll be some communication. Is there anything left of what we were trying to do when we added that language?
I don't think it's anything explicit now in this bill. I mean, again, VITA created the fund, and the manager of VITA is on the fund board of advisors. So there's that sort of inherent link, but there's no operative wording here that says you need to go check with VITA and see if there are funds available. It's a different, mechanism, right? I mean, it's the loan side versus the equity investment side.
There was another section we changed where we try to put VITA in contact with the seed capital people.
That was in your report, and that lives on. That is whether it's this piece you added. So they did not have this, and you guys added these two pieces, which live on in the House version.
Okay, can we go back to the other one? I think maybe I'll make a bold statement. I don't think people will have a problem here, but what if we just changed in this one, the shall to may? And leave it to their discretion, but they have some encouragement here to look at that. I don't think the House would object to that, but if they do, we'll have to get back. So they could put some guidelines in if they want to. Okay.
The Board of Advisors is the Senate language. The report is the Senate language. This is an S62.
You can skip over all of this till we have our phone call.
All right,
I've just clarified your number, so hopefully that will be happening ASAP.
So we have capital investment grant program. They have reduced the amount for right now, 10,580,000 to account for 420, I believe, in the challenge grant program. The other change is that the maximum amount of a grant is returned to 3 million rather than 500.
Okay, this is one of the things we need to talk about. We didn't reach agreement on this.
So,
I
sorry,
had-
what page you on, David? The
Page
end?
34.
34, thanks.
I had said I'd be willing to go to 1 million and no more in the first year of this program. I know Senator Clarkson has potentially a different transformational opinion. Remember, we're down to less than 11 million now, and there's supposedly 65 million following on this. I would like to see how this operates before we give out very large grants at this point. But I said to them last night that I bring it to the committee and see how the committee felt, but I think this is a brand new program, a lot of discretion in this program. Uh, uh, I'd like to be nimble, but also don't want to see the first, us limiting ourselves to potentially as few as 3 projects in the first year. Um,
How about splitting the difference and doing 1.5?
I really like 1 at this point.
I know you do.
Keisha, do you have a feeling on this?
I mean, it's that time of session where I don't want to, I would just say either split the difference or someone decide. I think we have 2 hours, so I don't have a strong opinion unless you need me to.
Senator Brock, I'm afraid you're going to go to 1.5.
Well, I'm kind of ambivalent. I could do 1.5. I could do 1.
Okay, we're going to let Senator Ballant decide this one. Okay, let's go on. It'll be 1.5
Not
or more.
ridiculous.
Okay, am I still screening? You guys still seeing this?
What's that?
Yeah.
Are you still seeing this on your screens?
Yep.
Yes.
Great, wonderful. All the other language is, and they didn't have that program at all. So it's all your language.
Right.
This is a change. I mean, the economic recovery grant language, it's still $20 million. But it basically gets added to the 10 in H315 Act 9, the $10 million grants that you worked on, where you gave first priority to businesses that have not received assistance. And it says it basically follows all those same guidelines, and then it adds in language that is directly taken from the interim final rule for ARPA. So I don't know if you want to read through all this. It basically says the agency has to follow what the ARPA interim final rule guidance says.
Right.
Wow, I didn't realize that there was so much here. Is there any reason why we can't do this and keep our 3 provisions as well, which I re-looked at? They thought they were restricting, and I don't think they're restricting other than in a good way. I mean, that may be one way to move this along. We put 3. Basically, what we said is the money here is so close in time to the other monies and the agency has spent a lot of time and money in setting up guidelines for the first $10 million, that we would follow those guidelines for the second 20 million. And but we wanted to make sure that they had a third choice in terms of how much they put out, in case the example was $1 loss and somebody getting $150,000. So that was number 1. And then this one here was designed to target also, is just basically saying, as they get applications in, if they're awaiting, if they have information that a business is about to get a big federal grant, they can hold back on that until they see what that grant is and how it might affect this, that other thing, and how it might affect this grant. And the last one was in both pluses and minuses. I think, if there is oddball situations where the tax loss is clearly because of a loss carry forward from 5 years ago, or in the alternative, on the flip side, if they would show more of a loss if they hadn't done some oddball thing, then they should get more of a grant. But that's discretionary, the third one. They don't have to do anything with that. So I don't know if you can give us a quick answer, David, if we can combine these 2, where we could keep ours and they could add the connection with ARPA ARPA,
ARPA.
I said it, ARPA, I corrected myself. ARPA funding. David told us before that of all the pieces in here, that this was clearly one that meets ARPA requirements. So I don't know that we have to put all their language in, but I have no objection to it as long as we keep our language. So David, maybe you could work on that. And if you see a problem with that, where somehow they conflict, either the guidelines or these three.
I don't think there's a conflict. I think it's a significant policy disagreement, particularly on the net adjusted loss being the least amount of a grant. I think that's just a policy dispute that you guys have. I will say that based on the guidance, if the agency were to give $150,000 to a business that only had $1 loss, that would be a violation of the federal law. So I don't know that that's gonna, happen. It has to be not only in response to, but the benefit has to be proportional to the harm caused. So that's part of the guidance.
Right.
But
And that's
I think that, again, the piece on A1, I think, is just a place where you, the Senate, the House, and the agency have just all been sort of at odds, and I don't know how to change it other than for you to put it back. And
Well, let me ask you this. I guess my question is the proportional language, maybe that does take care of our concern or my concern, but the agency has always told us that they were going to give, once a person was eligible, they were going to give out either $150,000 or 3 months of fixed expense.
right.
And are you saying that they would be in violation of ARPA at that point if that was their position?
I hear you. I agree. I've heard that as well. I mean, this piece here, subdivision 2, again, directly taken from the interim final rule. So I think it would be very problematic if the agency just gave out $150,000, and based on and not consider what the actual harm suffered is. That's what all of this language says. And I guess in their defense, this only came out a week ago, but it's pretty stark.
Well, okay, so in their thing, B up there, it says to the extent of harm. Would that, in this context now with the guidelines and everything, would that be equivalent to tax loss? Because that may, if we put the word tax loss in there, that may do it for me. If it could be anything they say is other than, we're trying to tie this to tax loss, and now if
Right.
they go to harm in
Oh.
terms of what the size of the grant is, it undermines it.
I don't think that it, under the guidance, it necessarily needs to mean tax loss. It says that as long as the program is established to be responsive to harm caused by COVID and proportionate to the harm, the state has flexibility to determine what the measure of that is. So whether the state says that's loss of revenue, 1 month to another, or a tax year or whatever, it just, there's no specific way it has to be set up, as long as it's generally following that responsive proportional mandate.
All right, I think we need to have some more conversations with the House about this, unfortunately.
yeah.
Okay.
And Kay should, I guess are we still not including a Q1 of 21 in terms of tax loss?
I got really confused about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to make a suggestion, and maybe you can come up with language. I had said this before, hope people agree. And I told the lodging industry I would do this, is that if you could put in, to the extent funds remain available as of a certain date, whichever, when the application periods are likely to cease or wind down, that money should be prioritized to businesses that have suffered, that have remained closed or partially closed pursuant to executive orders from the period of January to April. So one sentence like that.
So I think that ARPA funds can't be used for costs incurred before March the 3rd of this year. I mean, I could be wrong about that, but that's what the guidance, that's what the act says. It's March 3rd through December 31st, 2024. So I don't know that you can use ARPA funds for January and February.
Of
What
this
about
year?
last year? What,
What?
Oh, so you can use it for losses from March until now?
Sorry, March 20 or March
March.
21?
March 3rd of 2021 is what ARPA says.
So is this whole paradigm askew here? I mean, we're basing it on their losses in 2020.
Yeah, it's not clear to me. I mean, don't go
okay,
changing everything, and I could be wrong, but that's what the act says. It says costs incurred between March 3rd, 2021 and December 31st, 2024. So, does that mean that it's the state's costs incurred, or does it mean it's the business's costs incurred? It's probably the state's, but it's not clear to me. And I know that we have about 2 hours before we have to adjourn, and I get that, and I'm not trying to throw a monkey wrench in there, but I have to at least note on the record that that's what the act says.
Well, it's a big monkey wrench. Is
Is-
there
Is
a
Joan,
is there a
Yeah.
responsibility to put this money out if it's going to have to be returned? Or is there a way in the budget or someplace where they say, to the extent consistent with ARPA funding, and then all this money sort of goes away if what you're reading is true?
Well, it all has to be obligated by December 31st, 2024, and then actually spent by 2026. So looking forward, you've got a really long tail, but again, it says costs incurred March 3rd, March 3rd, 21 through December of.
So can you do if you could do my language and
Yeah.
just put the reference dates March 21 to the date of application, something like that, if there's partial closure. Because we've heard a lot of concern that like the lodging industry has been shut down and continues to be shut down, and
Yeah,
just looking at 2020
Well,
would fully capture the extent of their loss. And-
I hear you. I also want to, in response to the email that you all have been getting about tax loss and all that, I want to remind everybody that Act 9, Section 3 says you have to have suffered a tax loss to qualify for the program. So,
right. No, we get that. It's just the time frame is
Yeah.
the question mark.
I hear you.
I feel like this winter, which was so brutal on our lodging, and they're all beginning to emerge out from it
So,
now.
so we have to
Hey.
break. We have to be on the floor at 10, right?
There's only one piece left here, and they wiped out the apprenticeships.
They wiped it out.
They deleted the apprenticeship $2 million.
I think we talked about that last night, and they were okay with it for some reason. Yeah, I mean,
So I need to put that back.
yep. Okay.
I
So-
thought that's what I
Let's go to
understood.
the floor. I will get up and make an announcement as to when we will next meet. I will send an email out could all of you, before you sign off, just tell me what your conflicts are for the rest of the day, so I can find another hour somewhere to meet? Or you can tell me.
Supposedly, I'm in approach with 157 at 1 o'clock, but I probably will be free from 1:30 or 2 on. We
Okay,
have no gov ops.
I don't think we have a finance committee meeting, do we, Senator Brock?
Yeah, we have no gov ops.
Not that I'm aware of. I do have a meeting between 12 and 1.
Okay. And
If we don't meet finance, then I'm free most of the afternoon, but
I
I
actually
don't know right now.
could be foolhardy, but I think the first calendar is pretty short. So maybe if we get off really quickly, we could just reconvene at the fall of the gavel. So
Okay.